You all probably know by now that when channels like mine, shows like mine, talk about stories like the one I'm about to talk about, we get demonetized and penalized on YouTube and Facebook. But what has been captured on video over the last 24 to 48 hours is too insane, and it's too important not to tell you about it and to show it to you. So let's dig right into it. First of all, New York Police Department officers have been caught on video beating a cyclist with batons as he tries to cross the street. The cyclist seems to be crossing his bike while wearing a helmet at a crosswalk, mind you, not even jaywalking. And multiple officers are just beating the crap out of him. And it looks like they're beating the cyclist on the upper leg. Eventually, the cyclist is forced off of his bike before the video ends. We don't know exactly what led up to it. But at this point in the video, this is not an individual that is resisting, and there are multiple officers beating him with batons. And this led to Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to tweet, quote, "Horrifying. You start with the tiny possibility that two officers may be walking over to de-escalate the abusive one. Instead, they join in beating a man trying to get out of traffic. This isn't a problem of bad apples or incidents. This is an institutional and systemic crisis." And the reason I'm picking this incident to talk about is that Congresswoman AOC's response mirrors exactly what I've been talking about all week when she says, this isn't a problem of bad apples or incidents. This is an institutional and systemic crisis. When I did my first commentary about the protests and the civil unrest that we're experiencing on the Monday show, that was the main point that I tried to make. There were really 2 points. Point one was, anybody claiming some grand unifying theory about this is all about capitalism. This is all about race. This is all about police brutality. It's not. So any grand unifying theory that focuses on one element is destined to fall short. But maybe most importantly, that the individual incidents may give us a window into the systemic problems, a lens, a suggestion, but really, we need to be talking about the systemic aspects that are plaguing our country. And the debate over good and bad police doesn't actually address the systemic issues that are at the heart of much of what is going on. In another video from North Carolina, police likewise were filmed. In this video, they are destroying elements of medical, for lack of a better term, a sort of medical station that had some medics and basic first aid supplies and a lot of bottled water. You can see in this video police standing above a ton of destroyed and poured out bottled water there in Asheville, North Carolina. A report said that police hit some of the medics with their shields and knocked people to the ground. And this is, again, you know, we can talk about individuals, but there's something particularly nefarious in this instance because of the principle called medical neutrality. So we have norms that are being ignored. We've talked about you don't go after press, and we've seen press attacked both by some protesters and by police in different places over the last week. But now we're talking about the principle of medical neutrality. In any conflict, you do not go after anybody who is providing medical services. You have a protest, you have police. Most protesters are peaceful. Most police are good. There's some scuffle. You do not pull the medical people into it. Police may try to argue, well, if the medical people weren't there, the protesters would be less brazen and aggressive. No. At the international level, going after going after medical is a violation of the Geneva Convention. These are, of course, domestic protests. We're talking about domestic law enforcement. The Geneva Conventions don't apply. But if this conflict, instead of being between protesters and looters or police and protesters or police and looters or whatever, if this were a conflict between two countries and the Geneva Convention rules applied, either side destroying medical elements would be a violation of the Geneva Convention. So we've got attacks on media, people from the press hit with rubber bullets, sprayed, hit with shields, almost everything we've seen over the last 7 days. The point of this segment is not let's pick on police or particular police any more than I pick on individual protesters. Most protesters are peaceful. Protesters are peaceful. The ones that aren't peaceful are really not protesters. They're doing other things. They're looters, they're instigators, inciters, whatever, provocateurs. Police are mostly doing the right thing, and we have shows of support and kneeling and singing and everything with police from all over the country. But this is about the bigger picture. We have a horrible situation going on, much of it because of protests, because of police brutality. And we are seeing everything from cyclists beaten to a medical station destroyed to a president saying, hey, here's an idea for how to solve the protests and unrest caused by police brutality. Let's encourage more brutality against protesters. Everything we are seeing at a systemic level is the opposite of what we need. Thankfully, at the individual level, many police departments have been great. Many individual officers have been great. We've seen protesters bringing water to police. We've seen police joining protesters and all of this stuff. But unless the systems are changed, nothing will change. And so later on today, a lot of people on my streams this week and via email have been saying, David, can you explain how to deal with police brutality? And essentially none of it has to do with the individual. It is all systemic changes, and I'm going to outline them for you a little bit later on in the program.